This is right now we're going to move into the sustainability in the digital era. So sustainability has been discussed for ages, especially now that we are facing another industrial revolution with the advanced technology. So in a world more and increasingly shaped with technology, sustainability is no longer optional practice. You have to make sure that the long-term growth and resilience is also supporting the sustainability. So in this session, we will explore three core dimensions, addressing the environmental impact of digital technologies, embracing the social responsibility, and also integrating sustainability principles into digital transformation. So we are curious to know, do you practice sustainability in your everyday life? And if so, you can drop your way to make sure that you do sustainability practice in the chat box right now. But if you don't, that's all right. We're going to have this session presented by Ms. Esther Wee to guide us through this session, sustainability in the digital era. So Ms. Esther Wee is a partner at RHT Law Asia, bringing a deep expertise in intellectual property law. She is also serves as the president of the International Intellectual Property Commercialization Council Singapore chapter and is the vice chair of Brands for Good, as well as the board of director at the Singapore Digital Chamber of Commerce. With her extensive experience at the intersection of law, sustainability, and of course, digital commerce, Esther Wee is uniquely equipped to shed light on how to make sure that our business, our plan ahead is also supporting the sustainability. So please give a warm welcome to Esther Wee on the stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Laika. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the session. I think we only have 18 minutes, so it's not too much of a time to go into detail on all the aspects. But I just wanted to focus on the root word of sustainability and what sustainability means, because there's a lot of talk about sustainability within ESG, IP, and so forth. But I would focus on the growth, maintenance, but sustainability means sustaining. And how do you maintain growth and innovation in the digital economy, in the digital era? Right. So let me just share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Laika, can you confirm? Laika?
Can confirm.
Okay, all right.
We can see it.
Okay. So a little bit about myself before we go into, so everybody has a background of what my expertise are. So as Laika mentioned, I am a partner at RHT Law Asia, and I do a lot of legal and also consulting actually in the space of intellectual property, corporate, commercial, and regulation compliance. And although it's very industry agnostic, I do have a special focus as well, particularly on the digital assets and technology practice. So without further ado, as I mentioned, I'm just going to focus on these two things, right? One would be the sustainable innovation framework using intellectual property. And then I would also jump into looking into digital transformation, focusing on two very broad and hot topics. As you mentioned, AI revolution has been something that everybody's been talking about, and it's constantly changing as we speak, because every second or every 5 minutes there is a new AI tool coming and everybody's jumping on an AI wagon. And the AI revolution is really looking at it from the lens of transforming ways of doing business, as the previous speaker has shared, right? There are a lot of AI tools looking at how we can transform our business to be more efficient, new business models coming up, and so on and so forth. So, if you're in a traditional business and you're not looking into AI, you will be left behind, right? Even a lot of the traditional advertising companies are also facing a lot of challenges, because nowadays people would just use a lot of AI tools to get a lot of their work done. And then the next focus that I'll be talking about is actually the era of the digital assets. This is transforming ways of actually traditional financial investment, where we see more and more traditional assets being transformed into tokenizations, tokenized securities, and so on and so forth. So we do actually see a wave, and how intangible assets play a role is because the recent S&P statistics also shows that nowadays the 95% of actually a lot of business assets actually comes from intangibles as opposed to tangible assets because of the move and the shift towards the digital economy. All right, so let's start with the IP framework for sustainable innovation. I mean, the root of IP rights or IP laws or framework that came about is actually to facilitate innovation. And IP, as some of you may or may not know, IP is the broad right. And then, of course, we have trademarks, which talks about protection for brands, logos, so on and so forth. Then we have patents, which talks about inventions and innovation. Copyrights in relation to anything written, music, source code, so on and so forth. And then we have designs, which will protect any creative designs. For example, in relation to your bags, your Cat Kidston, your LV monograms, so on and so forth. And the IP framework came about to encourage and also to protect, the creators who came out with all these brilliant and innovative ideas so that they can claim ownership rights and then fairly facilitate, because if you can claim ownership rights, you can then further license in a framework where there is fair payment, and you can get rewarded and remunerated accordingly. And as far as patent is concerned, patent reviews or forces the creator or the inventor to reveal the very basis of how certain patent claims or innovations are made, so that these informations are publicly available, and then other people can innovate on it, right, without having to spend the R&D on the first version of the innovation, and they can innovate further, so on and so forth, thereby promoting sustainable innovation and also fairly rewarding the creator, because they have come up with a lot of money in R&D, so they should have some form of first mover advantage. So it's keeping things in check and in order and rewards the creator fairly. But because of emerging trends, as we mentioned, it does promote challenges to the current IP framework. How? Because there's always this IP versus open source innovation. IP protects, whereas nowadays we see open source code, crowdfunding, people sharing ideas openly. For example, maybe like in the industry of Tesla, Elon Musk, and the electrical vehicle space, Elon Musk says, use my IP. I don't really care, because I want people to move so that we can innovate further and for people to jump on board and for more adoption, because otherwise it might stifle competition if we have to then thread around infringement and all that kind of stuff. Then also there's this evolving digital economy where there's introduction of new and undefined elements and categories of IP assets that may not have been anticipated by the current IP framework when the acts have been drawn up. They didn't anticipate different blockchain, how AI will affect and so on and so forth, which we will later find out as I share certain case studies with you. Now moving on to this concept, right? And I want everyone also to give some thought about it. AI innovation, is it a friend or a foe? Does it enable sustainable growth? And of course, that's the very essence of why people come up with AI tools and why we use AI tools is to increase efficiency and help us do our jobs better. But also, will there in the future result in a decline of human creativity, where we get lazy and just everything complexity, everything ChatGPT, and as it reduces a lot of the mundane day-to-day work, whether people would actually put in effort beyond AI-generated content. So that's something to think about, right? And when we look at the challenges that surrounding AI and the whole AI revolution, first of all, I want to break it down to three main points. One is the issue of authorship and ownership. Because a lot of the AI framework that is in existence revolves around, as I mentioned, protection of the creator. And the creator here being humans, where there's always a human element to it. And so it is unclear, right, in the space of advent of AI revolution, who is the author, who would be the owner of certain generated content, AI generated content. Is it programmer? Is it the user? If I give it enough prompts or enough, creative prompts to prompt the AI to create certain things, or is it the AI itself? Because maybe my prompts are very basic, and 90, 95%, 99% of the end of the work product is AI generated. And so this leaves a lot of room for interpretation, and it opens a huge can of worms in relation to interpretation of the law. Then there's also the legal framework gaps, whereas many jurisdictions do not recognize AI, as an author. So imagine if you have software and then you disseminate everywhere, you have to grapple with so many different jurisdictions, having not clear and detailed laws regarding ownership. So you just got to, if you're a first mover, you got to bite the bullet, just pick one and go with it and deal with the issues later. So in terms of Singapore's position, the Copyright Act, we're also not there, but not there yet, because we state that the work must be original for copyright to subsist. And, as of today, there's no case law yet. So we're, waiting to see how that evolves. So in terms of originality and creativity, that's another challenge. And I won't go into too much detail on this one. And as I mentioned, how original the AI generated content is, and whether or not the human has added their own creativity and their own touch on top of the AI generated content. And then also there's an issue of enforcement, whether how we can identify and prove that AI generated content infringes IP rights. It can be complex because we don't know how the AI is being trained, and what kind of attribution challenges do we give credit to who, and do we get consent from people. So let's dive into some case in points to give you a bit of idea, right? So this case in point is the US case, Tyler versus Ian Chu, where this doctor have tried to name an AI system called Darbus, the inventor, right? And then, has claimed he acquired the rights through his ownership of Darbus. So he's the owner of the AI tool, and he's used the AI tool to help him come up with his patent, and then he's named the AI as the inventor. So usually it's a human inventor we're talking about here. And at the end of the day, the US patent court says the AI systems cannot be named as inventors. And so this also aligns with certain similar rulings in other jurisdictions, such as the UK. How this presents itself in the realm of inventions, because innovations today as well, there are many AI tools out there that you can use to speed up your R&D process. So I think this case made it quite clear that if you want to still name an inventor, it has to be a human inventor and not an AI system as an inventor. So another case in point that we can look at is the Getty Images and Stability AI case. This is Getty Images filed a lawsuit against Stability AI because it says that Stability AI has used, they have scraped all these images, right, from Getty's websites without their permission, and they've trained to train it to use their on their AI image generator. So the issue here is whether Stability's AI use of these Getty images for training purposes, to train your LLM, constitutes copyright infringement, and whether the AI generated outputs from the AI image generator infringes on Getty's copyright and trademarks. And of course, whether AI training and all that kind of stuff, using of this content could be a defense of fair use so that there's no copyright infringement. Now, this decision is still ongoing. It's yet to reach a final decision. So we are all waiting to see and anticipate to see how the High Court's decision and the developments of this decision will affect the court's position and interpretation of this. So although, the latest development is that the court then refused to strike out training and development claim. And then they said that, this may have some real prospect of success. And I think in terms of Singapore, as I mentioned, there's no case law yet, but the law is evolving. I think in our recent Copyright Act of 2021, the government did introduce a defense for copyright infringement relating to machine learning. So they classify it as computational analysis. And this defense allows for copying of copyrights work, for certain computational data analysis, including training machine learning models, but subject to certain conditions. So the conditions are, like, for example, you can share copies of the work, and then you have to work in a certain conditions. But these are all in the law. It hasn't been translated. It hasn't been tested in court yet. So let's see how it goes in relation to this this portion of the law. All right. So AI innovation, friend or foe, I would say it's a choice. How you use it determines the outcome. And therefore, I think it's very important to promote responsible use, right? And so not just take AI generative data and not put in your own human creativity on it. Because if you then put in enough, you can say that, I've modified it such that it's mine and there's originality and creativity on top of what AI can help. So I always see AI as a tool and not the be all and end all. And therefore, responsible use of AI is also important. Because of time, I will not go so much into this, but if you are interested, you can check out the EU AI Act. It's the first AI Act that has been enacted in the EU, which promotes, responsible use, and it categorizes the different types of definitions of AI systems and what are the obligations. If it's a higher risk, what you do, higher responsibility, and then it's also regardless of the geographical location. All right, so I think responsible use is very important. And then frameworks, law, policy, and governance are important to ensure sustainability in the growing industry. There still needs to be a check and balance, right? Though a bit slow, but I think the law evolves with the trend. And so another evolving trend, as I mentioned, is the era of digital assets, where this is also, a trend where we are slowly seeing, because I think there's a movement to try and get the traditional financial institution, going on using blockchain to do investments, and you can see now that there is the two range of school of thoughts, or rather seeing the traditional finance institution adopting more solutions based on blockchain, but very heavily regulated, by their MAS, by so on and so forth. You see Standard Chartered or other banks offering tokenized deposits, and you're seeing that business model change. But then there's also another school of unregulated digital assets community, which are still basically the Wild Wild West, if they call it, right? And slowly seeing how these two school of thoughts and economy go hand in hand, and how they interact will be very interesting in the coming years. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they tried to convince, Australian stock exchange to go on fully on blockchain, but it's taking a while because everything needs to be converted, and so it takes a while for mindsets to change and for adoption to come. So in relation to the regulated digital asset space and the unregulated digital asset space, if you are in this space of looking to invest financially, you got to know where you are playing the game. And of course, in terms of if you're launching a certain token or a certain digital asset product, how do you navigate the rules and regulations, whether it's securitized asset or a non-securitized asset? I think that's kind of where we have to come into play, because as you will see, the jurisdictions involved and the law around this is also evolving. This is kind of feeding phase for what's the future of the digital assets economy. And so specifically, I want to focus something on tokenization of IP, or on IP rights, just to point out certain things. Of course, IP is also another asset class, and the things that you see here are some of the more sort of recognizable, or things that people are going into trying to tokenize some of these what we call alternative assets. And the latest trends that I've spoken to some businesses is they're trying to see if they can actually fractionalize. So tokenization, if for those of you who are not familiar, is actually just fractionalizing ownership. So it could be in the form of fractionalizing an IP ownership of, for example, a particular art, or a gold bar, for example. And so if you cannot afford a particular art, which is in the millions, you can tokenize it so that you own a piece of the ownership in the form of a token, and then you mint it, and then you trade it on the digital exchange and then the market price and market value will be determined by that. And so instead, they will open up the opportunity for a lot more investors who are retail investors to then dabble in this this alternative way of financial investment. So there's this fractionalized IP ownership, and actually some businesses don't even go into fractionalizing the ownership or the underlying asset, but they actually fractionalize the value or the return of investment of the IP asset. So it's a bit like crowdfunding where you say, do you all want to have a share of maybe the return of investments for a film that we're going to create? We're going to create this, we're going to tokenize the rights, in the form of smart contract. If you want to put in a certain amount of money. So as I mentioned, it's still in the gray area of regulation. Of tokenization of IP. IP is at present is a combination of regulated and unregulated areas, depending on the model, structure, nature of tokens. If anybody of you are interested in this area, if you want to know further, or have any further questions, I'm happy to take it after the call. In terms of, for example, we're seeing some of the South Korean companies, where they started, tokenizing, for example, music rights or sound recording rights. They have come to us and asked, whether could we then make Singapore a HQ instead, because South Korea is clamping down, and they are introducing legislation to also regulate token securities, which will include some of these models. So the future, what is the future outlook? In general, I would say digital economy is the future. The future is now. It has permeated every part of our industry and lives. So I would say don't fear it, embrace it. And maybe perhaps we need to change our old ways and see what are the part you can play in terms of the responsible use, right? Or if you are, if you are a user, use it responsibility. If you are an owner or business owner, lead the way, contribute through your thought leadership in the various industries in relation to all these issues at hand. So if any of you have any questions, just reach out to me. We are a law firm. We cover almost all of our Southeast Asia, and as a law firm, we also dabble into the digital space, and happy to have a chat. You can scan the QR code. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Esther Wee, for the very insightful and very sparking curiosity as well about the tokenized future of digital business as well. So the case that you present is very interesting, the ongoing cases, especially because right now in the internet, there are lots of discussions of copyright and, AI training that steals from smaller artists or illustrator, for example, on Pinterest or from other websites, that they are also like, okay, this is just a carbon copy of what I made. So, but the problem is that because they're small artists, they cannot do anything about it. So it's very interesting that right now the cases of, for example, the Getty image is still ongoing, because maybe it's also the same, but of course Getty Image is like a bigger company as well. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, if you have any question for Esther Wee, you can type in the chat box and she will answer it there. Thank you so much, Esther, for spending your time in the session and makes us understand the environmental impact and also the security impact as well about the more digitalized world.